this troubles me. And this isn't breaking news, but it's a different angle that I've seen this before, and it troubles me. And I think that the best of us can all agree on this. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. This ought to be a unifying issue, because I believe that this problem right here speaks mostly to our human dignity. You know, Jefferson, whether you like him or not, the beautiful line in the Declaration of Independence that I often quote because it's so powerful. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, in other words, no one ought to take your life. 2, you should be free to live that life as you choose. And finally, pursue the results that you care deeply about in your family life, your spiritual life, your physical life. Like, that's the pursuit of happiness. I want to be free to achieve this life, these results. That's powerful. And again, our founding fathers flawed. There's great irony in that, in the sense that there wasn't true liberty in this country when those words were penned, and that's a deep and dark stain on our country. But nonetheless, the words penned do capture the spirit that every human has, this longing for what I believe are those 3 results. And that's dignity. You take any one of those 3 things. You take someone's life, you take their freedom, and you don't allow them to accomplish what they desire to accomplish. I don't care which 3 you're talking about. You've robbed them of dignity, the dignity of life, the dignity of freedom, and the dignity of contribution. And so this is a dignity issue. Gallup data, new data, says that household income may play a role in young people's access to career role models. Well, it absolutely does. The may word there is essentially saying it's not across the board that every time someone is in a low household income upbringing that they don't have career role models. That's all the word may means. But unequivocally, the numbers are going to show you here that lower income households, so children growing up in lower income households, suffer from not having proper focus and true role models in what their financial and their professional future could look like. Here's the data. 1 in 5, so 20% of working young adults say there was no one in their life who taught them how to be successful during middle and high school. So in the American reality now, once we get kids in the 8th and 9th grade, they start thinking about their future. We just pound it into them, right? They get into the 9th grade and it's all about what school you're going to choose. You got to go to college, what college you're going to go to, what degree you're going to get so you can get a good job and not be on welfare, right? 20% of working adults, young adults in the United States said there was no one in their life who taught them how to be successful during middle and high school. Now, some of you, the most critical of you, would say, well, that's on their parents. They didn't parent those kids the right way. Maybe true, probably true. But I think we're focusing on, in this situation, the wrong issue because there is pain, there is poverty, and the kids are innocent. In other words, if a kid is born to a drug addict, it's not the kid's fault. If the kid is born to an alcoholic, it's not the kid's fault. If the kid is born in extreme poverty, it's not the kid's fault. I've been in the most poverty-stricken areas of our world. I've been in sub-Saharan Africa where people are living on less than $1 a day. I've been to Haiti, which is, in my opinion, the most poverty-stricken country on the planet. I've seen the destruction of poverty and corruption that keeps people in poverty with my own eyes. I'm not sitting here in my very comfortable sweatshirt in my awesome air-conditioned studio, unaware of how bad it is for young people who are born into low-income situations. I've seen it with my own eyes. Almost twice as many adults who grew up in financially struggling families say this. So 20% of working young adults say there was no one in their life who taught them how to be successful professionally during middle and high school. 40% who grew up in financially struggling families said that it is the same issue. So there are large gaps among those who grew up in financially stable, we'll call it middle class and up, versus lower class. There's a huge gap between how they're prepared for their future. And this is a societal problem. This ought to freak us out. It really ought to. It ought to upset us. It ought to say, wait a second. Where do we come in? I assume you agree with me. You ought to agree with me, or I can tell you right now, you're a bad human being. You're a bad human being if you go, I don't care how poverty-stricken the home they grew up in. You know, I don't care that their parents were druggies or alcoholics or just poor. And I don't care. That's up to no, it's not. It's not completely on them. There's a cycle of brokenness we have to break. We've got to break the cycle. More on that in a second. Among young adults who had someone who taught them to be successful, 27% say their role models were family members, and another 28% said they were a mix of family members and people outside their family. Now, what this speaks to is people who grew up in a middle class or higher economic situation had parents who were actually working and being successful, and so they saw it in the home. Great. That's number one influence. But they also maybe had sports programs, music programs, Maybe they lived in a wealthy neighborhood or middle-class neighborhood where there was a skateboard park and there were other kids out there who wanted to be good skateboarders. You ever think about that? Sometimes it's who your kids are hanging out with. And they're hanging out with kids who are from families that are doing something, then that rubs off on your kids because they go, if kids are hanging around people who are attempting to be something and do something, I'm telling you, it's huge. So quickly, what do we do about this? If public education is going to exist, well, you're going to have to get very, very serious about meeting these low-income kids where they are and show them that they can break the cycle. If they can't see it in the home, they've got to see it in school. They've got to see it in after-school programs. They've got to see it in sports programs, in music programs, in film programs. They've got to see that there is a way for them to climb out. And we, the people, can do that. We've got to start taking serious, what is it that we're actually teaching these young kids? Are we teaching them they got to get good grades just because? Or are we teaching them, how do I see a future to where I'm financially independent, professionally fulfilled?